Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Naomi Gerstel, a member of the Northampton Board and Speakers Committee that has put together a sequence of speakers that many of you have seen. First, I want to say a little bit about Northampton Neighbors, which is the group that sponsors the speaker series. It's a nonprofit volunteer organization launched in 2016, which now has, we're proud to say, over 1,000 members. We're devoted to providing services and social events to assist seniors so they can stay in their homes as they age, stay in place as they age, or as we like to say now, engage in place. Anyone can join, although you have to be 55 or older to get services. We're part of a national, no, really an international village movement. It's all over the world. One good thing about us, which is different from a lot of the other villages, is that we are completely free. Although we've been curtailed by the pandemic, I don't want to think about it, so I can't say it, the pandemic, but we're slowly moving back to services. We're doing our best, and we do check-in calls, interest groups, like a gardeners group, a book group, a food interest group. We have neighborhood circles. We're going to have a fabulous parade in September, probably in September. And of course, there's the speaker series. So first, I want to tell you the 5 aspects of logistics that you need to know about for today. First, most of you probably know chat is at the bottom of the screen, and Lisa's going to use it in an innovative way today to interact, and she'll explain to you how she will do that. But what you do is click on chat and then enter whatever you need to say, but be sure to hit enter after you write something in, or otherwise we won't be able to see it. Everybody's muted for the talk. We also provide closed captions, which means if you click on the bottom on the little thing that says CC, the icon that says CC, you'll be able to read what everybody says. We recommend that people watch this in speaker view, and I think it varies depending on what kind of computer you have, but in many computers in the upper right-hand corner, you can click on speaker view to see it in speaker view. And everything will be recorded today. It's going to be on YouTube and open media, so tell your friends who weren't able to see it, or if you want to see it again, it'll be up probably in 24 or 48 hours. And all our talks are there by our tech wizard, Nina Kleinberg, who couldn't be here today, but she is being, I don't know what the right word is, substituted for by Mark Herpel and Jane Fleischman, who I want to thank for the good work they always do. So what's going to happen today is I'm going to talk a little bit about the guests, and then we're going to have 30 to 35 minutes for a talk, and that's going to be followed by a Q&A. Which we will introduce. So now to our main event. As you know, the title of the talk is Forbes Library, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. We are honored to have the executive director of Forbes, Lisa Downing, to speak to us today. Among other credentials, Lisa has a Master of Library Science and serves on the board of the Western Massachusetts Library Advocates and the Northampton Survival Center. She co-leads a Girl Scout troop in her hometown of East Hampton in her free time, although I don't quite understand how she has any free time given all that she does. But let me go back a little bit in time. About 5 years ago, the Forbes trustees were selecting a new director. They received many good applications. It was a hard choice for them. But really, it wasn't such a hard choice because they selected Lisa to become the new director. They knew that what they were getting and they wanted more. Lisa had been the assistant director, patron services librarian at Forbes for 12 years, where she wore many hats, working on many things from statistical reporting to policy, recording to policy reports, to budgets, to community outreach. And as a Gazette article at the time of her hiring said, the trustees said about that Lisa Downing, they hired her because of her unwavering commitment and creative approach during her 12 years tenure as assistant director. And that's what landed her the job. When I told people Lisa was coming today, they gave us very similar response to the trustees, saying things like she's smart, imaginative, committed. And I must have heard the word wonderful a dozen times when people said she was coming. So, and I also want to proudly announce today that the Forbes Library, with through Lisa, has become a community partner with Northampton Neighbors. Lisa will be joined today by Dylan Gaffney, who's lived in this area his whole life and personally knows its history very well. He has worked in Northampton's public library for over 2 decades and is now the Associate for Local History and Special Collections, where he has completed and is working on a number of innovative projects. He has won awards, including the Massachusetts Library Association's Paralibrarian of the Year Award, and served on the Northampton Historical Commission, the Northampton Charter Review Committee, and as a co-founder of the Northampton Film Festival, to name just a few. So I could go on and on about both of them, but I think probably you want to hear from them. So it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Lisa Downing with Dylan Gaffney. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that warm and generous introduction. It is an absolute pleasure to be part of this esteemed series. And Naomi, you have been wonderful to work with, as everyone else in Northampton Neighbors. So thank you for inviting us here today. The library's relationship with Northampton Neighbors began at the organization's inception, if I'm putting 2 and 2 together correctly, when Forbes collaborated with Cooley Dickinson Hospital in a community read of Atul Gawande's Being Mortal. And I saw in your latest newsletter that Lee Bailey, who was there at that time and was one of your initiators of this organization, wrote about that experience and how that book inspired her and others to form what has become an amazing and inspiring organization to watch. And I'm so grateful to have Northampton Neighbors in Northampton. It adds so much to what we have in our community, and it makes me want to think I actually live in East Hampton, but I'm very tempted to age here because of the wonderful work that you do, and I mean that sincerely. And I'm excited to announce today that our partnership is growing through conversations with Naomi and others. We're looking at ways that we can even work more closely together because our missions are aligned, and I think we'll be stronger as allies. And we have done that to some extent, but we're looking to further joint programming, referral services, boosting information about one another's respective programs, and opportunities for intergenerational activities, because the library is able to attract and interact with kids from birth on. So I think that will be a really fun thing to see in the new year. Just to give you a quick sense of what we're going to be talking about today, as Naomi mentioned, the title of the talk is Forbes Library, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so we're going to begin with yesterday with Dylan Gaffney giving a brief history of the library, and then a sneak peek at some of the amazing images. Our image collection is phenomenal, and some of the projects that are being done there are really innovative. So I brought him on both for his expertise and his access to some really cool things that I wanted to make sure you got to see today. And then I'll take it back and talk about the library today and the impact of the pandemic on us, and then showcase a few services. And I see lots of familiar names and new friends that I haven't met yet. So I apologize if what I say is something that you already knew, but I'm hoping that everybody will learn at least one new thing about the library or be inspired about the library to use the library in one new way today. And then we'll end by talking about the future before we open it up for questions and answers. And I will now turn it over to Dylan Gaffney.
Great. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Lisa. I just want to echo what Lisa was saying. I love Northampton Neighbors so much, from its inception as an organization and how it's adapted to meet the needs and interests of the community. It's been really inspiring to the work we do. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen here. So as Lisa said, my name is Dylan Gaffney. I work in the archives and local history programs here at Forbes, and I'm going to take you through some photos illustrating a little of the history of Forbes Library, its outreach in the community and its role in the community, and a small selection of highlights from our collections. To learn more, we have an interactive timeline on our website where you can scroll through the history of the library's first 125 years. It's available through the front page, and it's a lot of fun. We celebrated our 125th year 2 years ago and put it together, and it was a really interesting project. So Forbes Library, just to give you a little intro, was designed by architect William Brocklesby in a style known as Richardsonian Romanesque, named after the work of Henry Hobson Richardson, who was also the designer of Trinity Church in Boston. It's built of Milford granite with Longmeadow sandstone trimming. Its cost, as reported in the 1895 trustees report, was about $114,000, which largely funded from funds left by the late Judge Charles Forbes. Here we see it in a cabinet card photo taken in 1893. This was taken just before the steel girders were about to be covered by the slate roofing tiles, which make up our beautiful roof. Here is our some of the original library staff photographed in the 1890s. Charles A. Cutter, our first librarian and the creator of the Cutter classification system, which we still use at Forbes, is in the center with the beard. Just to the right of our library staff with the amazing hats. Here are, it's just a wonderful shot of librarians dancing in the empty second floor of the library before the arrival of the book stacks to that floor. We've done some work to try to identify all the early staff of the library, and we believe the women here are Mabel Tainter, May Damon, Daisy Washburn, Alice Felton, Fanny Beals, and Clessie Putnam. But it's just a magical shot, really. This is an image of children reading in the children's room on a winter day after school, circa 1919. So the children's room at that time was located on the second floor where the arts and music department and archives are today. This is right where the CDs are currently, CDs and DVDs. I love this shot. I love the boy in the middle who's staring straight at the camera while the other kids have blurs of motion. I love that they're all dressed for winter, clearly. But lately it's taken on another relevance because these are children coming right out of a pandemic. This is right after the Great Flu pandemic of 1918 and into 1919. So it's taken on some extra meaning when I see it and I see the children in it. So for many decades, particularly in the period around the Great Depression, Forbes operated small branch libraries in schools throughout the city. Here's the Forbes Library Bay State Village branch in 1926. Here's the Bridge Street School branch in the late 1950s in the basement of the Bridge Street School. Books selected here, you can see, include the classic Heidi and Caroline Haywood's Betsy's Winter House, which was published in August 1958, which is probably very close to the date this photo was taken. We believe this to be a pre-1960 photo. Also, just the looks of these kids, again, staring straight into the camera, very dramatic. The clothing is amazing. So by 1963, Forbes had a working bookmobile, which was able to get materials out to the neighborhoods of the city, even in the summer months. Here is Joanne Patson, who still works for the library today. She was here today, seated at the table on the left, helping children. I'm not sure where exactly this picture is taken. I'm trying to recognize the building in the back, but you can see the swarm of kids waiting to get their books. And here's Joanne again, showing off our newly arrived site-saving books in 1967, which we now more commonly call large print. You can see a selection of classics, classic titles. So now I'm going to start some photographic highlights from our collection, starting with this circa 1865 image taken shortly after the trolley lines were installed on Main Street. You can see the horse-drawn trolley in the bottom right. This is a stretch of Main Street on the south side between what is now Thorns and Pleasant Street, roughly across from First Churches. 2 decades later, it's 1887, again on the south side of Main Street, just slightly lower in that same stretch. If you haven't had a chance to visit Historic Northampton's Making It on Main Street exhibit, I highly recommend it. We have hundreds and hundreds of terrific Main Street photographs throughout the ages, but they really have a complementary collection of objects and textiles and signs that really bring a really complex history to life. I'm continually amazed at how clear this photograph is, considering it was printed in 1887. It's pretty remarkable. This is William F. Prindle's plumbing shop. This photograph was taken in 1885 or right thereabouts. We believe one of the two men standing in the doorway to be Mr. Prindle, but for our purposes, the most interesting person is the man in the middle holding the watering can. His name is Timothy Lindez. This summer, we took part in a collaborative project with the Mass Public History Department and the Pioneer Valley History Network called Documenting Early Black Lives in the Connecticut River Valley, where we did deep searches in our archives for accounts and names of early Black residents of Northampton, both enslaved and free. So through that work, we were able to find out a lot more about Mr. Lindez, that he was born in Coleraine, that he married into the Bakeman family, who are said to have Black and Indigenous local roots. They were a family that stayed in Northampton from at least the 1840s, well into the 20th century. We discovered that Mr. Lindez's home was on Bates Street, right where the Montessori school stands today, and that he was said to be a soothsayer. So he's a really fascinating man, and we're so grateful for this project, which allowed us the time to delve into stories like his and recover some of the history there. This is a 1875 bird's eye map view of Northampton. We have a large collection of maps and atlases at Forbes, which along with city directories and house photos can be invaluable in helping the residents trace the history of their homes. The shapes and details of the houses in these bird's eye view are actually surprisingly accurate. You can see Round Hill Road on the upper right, Bridge Street in the lower right, the cemetery is there. And the old path of the Mill River on the left-hand side goes right down below Main Street. You can see the covered bridge is roughly where the bus station is today. And speaking of the Mill River, this shot is from 1936 of floodwaters on Pleasant Street near the corner of Strong Avenue / Pearl Street. It's just a remarkable image. And I love that although it was undated when we found a negative, we can date it by the Charlie Chaplin Modern Times poster, which is in the window of the building that is now Deals and Steels and was City Cafe, and housed a bowling alley, as you can see from the sign above it. We have a lot of photos of the 1936 flood and 38 flood and the 27 flood, which are really stunning in how much they reveal about how the devastation of having the river that close to Main Street in those days. This is a really beautiful early Kodachrome slide of the Look Park pool taken by Robert Emmerich in 1941. The colors in this slide are just fantastic. And you can see that Black bathing suits were very much in vogue at the time, including some men's one-shouldered swimsuits, which I hadn't seen in any of our images before. Were really interesting to me. Another great Kodachrome slide is this one of the 1954 Tercentenary Parade on Main Street. This one was taken by Walter Corbin of Florence. The Queen's Float is passing here right in front of what is now Balagan, was formerly Sam's Pizza, and before that Bart's, and before that Bonducci's, going all the way back to the Boston Fruit Store. The Pleasant Time Shop, which you can see on the left, is now Broadside Books. So these next few images are from the Daily Hampshire Gazette collection. Here at Forbes, we have the negatives from staff photographers from the Gazette from about the mid-50s until they went digital in the early 2000s. So there's tens of thousands of images capturing life in the area from the mid to latter half of the 20th century. So this is Harry Daniels of Daniels Clothing, standing by his clock, which has now been restored and is located in Pulaski Park. I love the details in this shot. You can see Wally's Soda Bar in the background, the youth loitering on the corner by Daniels, the McCallum's decoration on the railroad bridge, the man stopping to pick up a coin in the middle of Main Street. You can just make out the Jack August seafood sign beyond the railroad bridge, which brings up a lot of nostalgia for folks who grew up around here. And this is a rather elaborate soapbox derby from the mid to late 1950s. Obviously a super serious event, as you can see from the vehicle construction here. The adults here are using both a walkie-talkie and a telephone, which must be to communicate with the finish line or traffic control or something. The boy sort of in the back in the 88 car with the interesting headgear and goggles, we believe to be my father, Paul Gaffney, which I didn't know when I posted this picture online. And my aunt was like, "That's your dad." So this is an image of the Great Blackout in 1965. Daily Hampshire Gazette photographers made this long exposure photograph during the blackout, showing the darkened intersection of Main and King. When we posted this online, somebody described how he got it, how he set himself up, I believe on the roof of Sweeties and shot down looking. And you can see on the Calvin Theater marquee that it says the Beatles in Help in color, which again, dates it very well. This is a band called the Ravens, who were out of Williamsburg, Mass. They were playing at the Northampton Youth Center during a Battle of the Bands event in 1967. Once again, posting things online is just the best way to find information. We put this picture up and within hours had the name of every person in this photograph, you know, where those who were still living were, their set lists, what they, you know, they played The End by The Doors, which is a very ambitious song to play live. So we get all these great details whenever we do our Throwback Thursday posts on Facebook. This is a shot of Pleasant Street, circa 1973-74. This image is from the Northampton Planning Department collection here at Forbes, which is a small collection that contains photos collected by that department in the days before the revitalization of downtown in the 70s. You can see J.A. Tepperco on the corner where Northampton Wolves is today. Next to it is the Globe Theater, which shortly after this became Pleasant Street Theater, and it's playing Mean Streets. And you can see a billiard hall located right above where Downtown Sounds is today. This is the very first Northampton Gay Liberation March in May 1982, as it crosses the intersection of King and Main. Forbes has recently partnered with Smith College, Simmons College, Lilly Library, and No Hope Pride to create a series of oral history interviews and a digital exhibit on the early history of the Northampton Gay Liberation March and what we now call the Pride Parade. We hope to make the exhibit and interviews public via our website later this month. It's been a really rewarding project. The interviews are just amazing. Despite being created in the pandemic over Zoom, they're really powerful, and we can't wait to show them to everyone. And this is a shot of a band called Tizzy playing at the Bay State Hotel in 2001. We have a collection called the Bay State Hotel Collection of recordings, photos, flyers, and oral histories, which is part of a larger project by the Forbes Library to document the local music scene from the late 60s through the early 2000s. We digitize videos, cassettes, scan images to create a digital archive of the music scene in this period. This one was taken by local photographer Seth Kay. In February 2020, we had a huge event at the Academy of Music. Filled the place. Over 800 people had bands from that era play, showed interview clips, and weeks later the pandemic hit, and it was really felt like a last chance for a lot of these people for a while to see live music and also to see each other. People flew from all over the country to play. And these are images from outgoing City Councilor Bill Dwight's Instagram. As today's history is largely documented and happening online, we've had to adapt to try to figure out ways to save these memories for the archives. So we now preserve local websites and social media through a project started by the Internet Archive, whose Wayback Machine you may be familiar with. The images on the left are from the March for Our Lives in 2018, and the one on the right capture a number of local personalities, including Rachel Maddow. So now I'd like to pass it back over to Lisa Downing, our director, who will take you through a little about the Forbes Library of today and tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much, Dylan. Every time you speak and present, I always see something new, and I just love the way that you dig into those pictures. And you know, we look at a stagnant photograph and we think, okay, that's just a 2D, but you bring it all to life. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate Dylan being here with me, and he's going to run my slideshow. To get us all in the mood, so I'm going to talk about today and tomorrow. In that transition, I want you to think back to your first interaction, your first memory of the public library. And that may have been when you were a small child or maybe later in life, depending on when you first went. And I want you in the chat to type the word that comes to your mind when you think about that experience of going to the public library. And Naomi talked to us about how to do that, but chat is on the bottom of your screen. And so once you open up the chat window, you should see a box that says to everyone, and that means we'll all get to see it. And then once you have written your word, just hit enter. And I'd love to see what comes to your mind when you think back about those earliest public library memories that you have. And I'm just going to read a few off as they come in. Sanctuary, weekly visits, the smell of the book stacks, world traveling, adventures and mysteries, the reading rug, welcoming, so much to know, lazy childhood summer, library card, lovely welcoming librarian. That's great. And I know not everyone's memories are positive, and that's fine too if you have a less than positive memory, because there are mixed memories out there, and that's just fine. Exciting. Going to the library with an amazing film class and in high school saved me. What a great thing. What a great memory. Excitement, click of date card, being stabbed at clunk. Oh, I did a lot of those. Grumpy, strict librarian. There you go. They weren't all great. The glass floor. Oh, I wonder if that's locally. Exploring excitement, carrying books to the counter to check them out. Great, great. Thank you so much. And my first memory, so I grew up in Peekskill, New York, and we had a library that was in an old church. It was it was trying to make the best, I guess, out of what they did end up creating a more modern municipal library that I actually got my first library job in. But when I was a little kid, my mom would walk us down to the end of the street, and we'd go in there, and the smell, I have this very visceral remembrance of the smell. It was literally in the basement where most children's departments are or were until you have new buildings and you can do other things. But that experience of going in and just the power of being able to make these selections and walk home and have this card that granted me this great access and not have to worry about money or any of that was just something that stuck with me. And I'm sure it influenced me getting into this profession. So thank you for going down memory lane with me. So I will go through the slides here, and Dylan's going to advance them when we get there. So you can go ahead and advance. So Forbes Library is a private nonprofit that serves as the public library for the city of Northampton, along with our sister library, Lilly Library in Florence, who we work closely with. We were incorporated by an act of the state legislature that set forth the guidelines that followed the will of Charles Edward Forbes over 125 years ago. And this slide image is a painting of him. There were actually no photographs taken in his lifetime, but this portrait was done after he had passed. And this quote is often cited. It's one that inspires us to this day. And I'll just go ahead and read it because I think it's really beautiful. I mean, he was flawed. There's flawed things in his words, but this particular passage I really find inspiring. It has been my aim to place within reach of the inhabitants of a town in which I have lived long and pleasantly the means of learning, if they are disposed to learn. Earlier in the will, he said, "It is my design to form a library of works of science and the arts in their broadest acceptation of ancient and modern history and of the literatures of our own and other nations." So he had a very broad vision for what he wanted Forbes to be. And we like to think that we're living up to it. So we have certainly changed in many ways, but in some ways we are standing true to that vision that was set forth through that generous gift. We are governed by a 5-member board of trustees that are elected by the people of Northampton, and that is, again, by design of his will. And we had an election this week, and I think Devin Bruce is here on the call, and Russ Carrier also was reelected. So congratulations to them and anyone else here who was involved with the elections this week. The majority of our funding comes from the city of Northampton, and this is supplemented by endowment funds, donations, and grants that fill in the rest, including paying for library materials, technology, staff training, and programming. So it really, the large, the bulk of the pot is the city appropriation, but we do require and need all of these other funding sources to be able to do the expansive mission that we have today. You can go ahead and advance. So one of the ways that we fundraise is through the Friends of Forbes, and I have to give them a shout out because it's unusual that we have a 501c that supports our 501c3, but they support us in so many ways, including their spring garden tour, which I have an image of here, and a fall wine tasting. Any images you see in my slideshow today with crowded people without masks are pre-pandemic. I promise you we've been very safe around here, but we are looking forward to getting back to when we can have fun together like that. And they're fun community events, and they also raise really important money for the library. So I welcome you to get involved. And I just learned that the garden tour committee is looking and seeking volunteers to get involved with that project. So we need to get some new people interested. At the end of the slideshow, you'll see my email. So if you're interested in this or anything else, you'll have access to me and Dylan. And of course, there's always phone or stopping in and seeing us. You can go ahead and advance. So our last strategic plan, which was written pre-pandemic, visualized the library as a community hub, a central place where people connect with spokes that reach out in all directions into the community. And so it was we had really been focusing. This is a beautiful building. We had been working hard. We get, getting people in. A lot of magic happens here. And then the pandemic temporarily shattered our ability to serve as this physical space. And it really forced us to be creative in delivering services and providing community space in other ways. And we are finding that there are several changes that came about as a result of this forced innovation that we want to hang on to. So I wanted to talk just highlight a few of those. And before we advance, Dylan, that is the bust of Charles Forbes, which we often dress up for holidays. We're convinced he's okay with it, that he likes the attention. And here he is wearing a mask as he's a good person doing what he needs to do. Okay, go ahead and advance. So these are a couple of things we put together, the librarians, to really talk about the fact that the library was still here during the pandemic. So we really didn't want people to lose access to the library because it is a critical piece of so many of our lives for a variety of things. And some of the things that were born out of the pandemic for us were curbside pickup, which we had before, but was really underutilized. And so at one point, we were averaging about 75 of these a day where we were packaging materials up and bringing them out to people. We also developed a doorstep drop off. We have an outreach delivery service, which I'll talk about later on, but this was just call us up and we'll drop something off to you. And that's actually something we're going to hang on to because there are reasons when you can't get to the library for transportation or otherwise. And so we never want that to be a barrier for people not to get their access to the library materials. And then, of course, the virtual, digital, and hybrid world emerged, and including programming. We weren't quite as zoomed out as we are now, but the virtual programming, and I'm sure this is true for Northampton Neighbors and others, it's really great in several ways, in that you can bring in speakers that without having to be as concerned about geography, how far they're traveling. You can record them and make them available at other times. They have closed captioning, which increases access. So there's actually some really good aspects of the virtual programming. And what we're really excited about is moving into hybrid programming so that we can both give people the in-person in-library experience for those that were able to serve that way, and then still deliver it online, so that hopefully we'll get the best of both worlds. And then we expanded to text and chat access to our staff. And that's certainly something we're going to keep going, because people are modern. A lot of young people these days, it's like calling you, no way, I'll just chat. So we want to make sure that we are still available to them. And then online library card applications. So just make it easier for people to get to the library without having to get to the library. And then it also, the pandemic, we heard from so many people about how important the library was. And you can go ahead and advance, Dylan. People giving really heartfelt notes of thanks and appreciation. We were closed entirely for about 6 weeks or so. But then once curbside started and people were able to access their materials again, and then the access kept growing throughout, we've heard from people about how important that was to them. And it just reminded me and others here about the importance of reading as a way to combat isolation, or watching movies, or attending a virtual program. And Northampton Neighbors, you get that. And also providing stimulation, and then letting people travel, armchair travel in their mind, or explore new places and new situations through reading or movies. It's just really great. In making the best of what it was. The pandemic was not really great, but I give it a thumbs down. But this was really great. People being able to continue to read. All right, and you can go ahead and advance. So accessibility, this is something, so now I'm going to talk about some things that aren't directly related to the pandemic, but just are really important to the library. And accessibility is one of them, because we believe that the library should be for everyone. And that means to us that people should be able to continue to read despite vision loss, participate in discussions despite hearing loss, be able to navigate our physical spaces with ease and independence, see themselves reflected in the books on our shelves and in our programming, regardless of physical or mental ability, destigmatize mental illness whenever we can, and be supportive to those in addiction and recovery. And never have to stop losing library services when you aren't able to get to the library, or when memory loss makes it hard to keep track of library material. So we have provisions in place for all these scenarios, and we're also always realizing that there's something more or something different that we can do. So we're very open to feedback, and never hesitate to give us, to let us know if something isn't working, or if you have a suggestion for a way to have something work better for you, or a loved one, or somebody else in the community, because the suggestions help us to do better. And so this slide here, these images are a little funny, so I'll just tell you what you're looking at here. So on the left is Rick Ely, who did a bunch of training for us. He is blind and is a super tech whiz and can teach me lots about technology. So he did a series for us actually talking about accessibility that was terrific, and we hope to have him back sometime. On the right is our beautiful elevator, which the community really came out and supported us for. It was 6 feet of granite steps, and those 6 feet meant a lack of access for folks, because the lift that was there kept breaking down and kept breaking down. So now we have this gorgeous lift. And then the libraries are for everyone was actually a slogan that was developed by somebody else, and I'm sorry I can't remember their name to credit them, but it was one that we really loved and adopted, and it sort of is a little touchstone for us as we move forward. Dylan, you can advance. So another area that we've really been focusing on is racial and social justice. And the library issued a racial justice statement in the summer of 2020 that committed us to seek out and eliminate underlying structures of white supremacy and promote racial and social justice in our policies, procedures, and programs. As a result of this, we set up an advisory committee of community members that have been an amazing resource for us as we do this work. Some of the outcomes to date have been holding implicit bias training for our staff, eliminating overdue fines, which are an access barrier, our commitment to diversify the artwork on our walls, which is a really exciting project that we're just getting near to actually purchasing some new art. So that'll be really exciting. Hiring permanent staff with world language skills, proposal to offer stipends to committee members to make participation more broadly accessible, and developing alternative practices to police intervention at the library, auditing the diversity of books we have in our collection and that we are using in story times. And that's just the beginning. We're committed to this work on an ongoing basis. And we have a lot of work to do. I will not say that we don't, but I'm pleased that we're at least acknowledging that this work needs to be done and that we're making it a priority. And this is another opportunity. If that advisory board is of interest to you, we could use more community members. We're especially interested in people with different lived experience. So I invite you to reach out to me if that's of interest to you. Dylan, you can go ahead and advance. So I picked out just a few services here to highlight as we round to the other side of our talk here. So one is outreach delivery services, and this is a stock photo. It's really gorgeous, but I had to put a little shout out for the dog lovers, and don't worry, there's one for cat lovers coming up. But our outreach delivery services, I'm hoping are familiar to you, but if not, I just wanted to run through them quickly because they're really important. I know both for, they can be important for any of us at any time, but also for people in our lives that we think might enhance their life. And one thing I want to say about this service is that this is a service for people who, even if they have somebody who's getting prescriptions, or even if they're using your services and are able to get to the doctor, but getting to the library is that one extra thing that's hard for them or their caregiver to do. Like, call on us and let us help you out, because we don't want this to be the library to be one extra thing. We want it to be a bonus thing that makes life easier and better. So think of it that way. So beside curbside, there's short-term delivery. So that's if you have like recovering from a surgery or something's going on, you can just sign up on a temporary basis. As needed, as I mentioned, which is the one where there's a form or you just call us up. We don't even have to tell us why you can't make it to the library that day, and that you can do one day and then visit us another day and not utilize it, and that's perfectly fine. And then our more traditional homebound delivery service, where we actually pair you with a volunteer who will act as a proxy to borrow and return materials for you. And we are always looking for volunteers for these projects. So whether you're on one side of that or the other, this could be of interest to you. And then the latest thing we're offering there is neighborhood book boxes. And that is going to be, we're going to start with 5 out in the community, and they're going to supplement the little libraries that are on many front yards. We're putting them in places that don't have those and don't have easy access to books. And they're going to be stocked by library volunteers. And this project I became inspired by during the pandemic, when I was helping to stock a little library up at Village Hill. I don't know if my friends are here from there, but I appreciated little libraries. But during the pandemic, bringing books to people, like those images of the bookmobile that you saw and the neighborhood collections, like that is so critical, because coming to the library is a habit, and it's a privilege depending on your access to transportation and your time constraints. So we want to try to break all that down. So I just love this project. And if all goes well, we'll add another 5 in the new year. You go ahead and advance. So access to the internet. So we try to break down all those digital divide barriers that are out there. And I know that's hard, and that's actually something we've been talking with Northampton neighbors about, because I know you do an excellent job of providing training and like really inspirational, going into people's houses and helping them set up things, because so many things we need to do in our life we can't do without the knowledge to do it, myself included. So you can come here and use our internet. You can use our free Wi-Fi, printing, copying, faxing, all that stuff. And we also offer one-on-one support. Karen Gardner is the person in the gray shirt who, this is pre-pandemic, but I'm so hopeful she'll be back soon, who used to offer one-on-one technology support. But the librarians are still doing that. And we can also deliver that service over the phone or over a Zoom call, if that's a better way for you to do it. And we are now lending hotspots, which is an exciting addition to our program. And you can connect up to 10 devices to them, and they provide high-speed internet over the T-Mobile network. So, and you can, I think there's a small wait list for those, but those are available, as well as our ebooks and e-audio and all of that stuff, which is the products are never as intuitive as we'd like. So our librarians are happy to help with that stuff. You can go ahead and advance, and let's see, I have a few programming slides here, so we can cycle through them, but because they're all just so fun to look at, mostly for several reasons. One, just because they're really fun to see what's going on at the library, and also to remember back pre-pandemic, and I know we'll get there again. We have been doing things outside, but our programming has not come back fully yet because of the numbers aren't quite as good as we'd like. So library programming is always free and open to the public. And we have a calendar on our website that is up to date, but there's also a way to sign up for a weekly newsletter on our website that will send you once a week. You'll get an announcement on Fridays letting you know what's coming up at the library. So it's a pretty low bar we won't inundate you with email, I guess is what I'm trying to say, but and you could just ignore it if you're not interested that week. But if you're at all interested, please navigate to our website. There's an events tab across the top, and you'll see you can sign up for the newsletter there. And then many of our book groups are being held over Zoom still, so you can still get in on some virtual programming, our Far Out Film Club, and then make and take craft kits. For if you have kids or teens in your life, they're really fun. And I know there's been grandparents and other caregivers that have come in and really loved those and loved having them to share with young people in their life. So those come out usually weekly. And then our Hosmer Gallery, and Dylan, I'm sorry, I forget how many slides I have here. Oh yes, this is the show that's in our gallery now, and Karen Gardner's getting another shout out as one of the artists here. So these exhibits are up on our second floor, and then sorry, my eyesight is, I have to make this bigger. Len Sieve is the other photographer. So we have two photographers up there this month. The exhibits change out monthly, and they are always really, really engaging and stunning often. So it's worth the trip up to the second floor. And if you're an artist, we usually open up applications once a year for those. So we're a little backed up because of the pandemic, but it will open up again at some point. In the meantime, you can go and check out some really beautiful artwork. And then the Franklin Hampshire Career Center has a satellite office and at the library, and they just came back. So if you're in job search mode or unemployment assistance mode, you can take care of that at the library, which is great. And then this shot here is of two of our meeting rooms. So these are the two that we've opened up so far. We also have a community room, which is a little bigger, and then the Coolidge Museum, which is our biggest. And these we make available for community use. So you can hold a meeting or a discussion with other people if you need to gather. Right now, our capacity limits are really small, but we're hoping to expand them soon and eventually get up to full capacity limits. So those you can reserve on our website. And you can go ahead and advance, Dylan. We're nearing the end here. So the providing readers, viewers, and listeners all the best content is still at the heart of what we do. And this I had said in the newsletter article, if you got to read that, but it's so true. So these are some staff having fun. We had What's Your For, which was to really encourage folks of all ages to read 4 books over the summer, because I'm going to talk in a minute about the importance and value of reading. But we love to talk about books and movies and music and get new content into your hands. And so we have a lot of fun doing it. And there's a thing on our website called Your Next Great Read form, which I think you can advance, Dylan. And yeah, there's the cat, because the one of the librarians that often helps with this service is a cat lover. So this isn't her cat, but a little shout out there for the cat lovers amongst us. So this is a service that it's a form on our website, and you basically give us a few parameters, like what you're in the mood for, what you've read that you've liked, if there's things that are like no-goes for you in terms of like violence or otherwise, and what format you'd like, and we'll come back with some really targeted suggestions. And then you can give us feedback on those. Either we got it right or we got it sort of right, and then we'll make it even better. So it's an amazing service that's kind of a hidden gem. It's a sleeper on our menu, so please look for that and take advantage of it. We also have one for music, if I remember correctly, and Dylan, you can correct me if I'm wrong about that. You can go ahead and advance. And we have other fun things like musical instruments that you can borrow. So this is just a creative shot of some musical instruments in our collection. So there's percussion and stringed instruments and electronic instruments. We don't have any wind instruments because of sanitary reasons, but almost everything else. And there's just a really great collection if you played at one point in your life and you want to sort of pick it up and see how you feel about it. Or if you never played, you can get it when there's usually in a little instruction book, but it's a lot of fun. So keep that in mind. Okay, you can go ahead and advance. And so this is when I get a little serious in my talk, because this is something I feel really, really passionate about. And I just wanted to talk for a minute about this. And this is like, why are we so big on reading? And I'm sure if this is already known knowledge to you, I just I congratulate you for knowing it, and I'm hoping this inspires somebody here to think about this in a new way. So the Pew study recently did a survey, and they found out that about 1 in 4 Americans haven't read a book in any format in the past year. And when they analyzed those readers versus non-readers, they discovered a direct correlation between reading and educational attainment, which also correlates to income level. And then if you dig deeper, it is shown that in general, readers are those people who had access to books as children. They were read to as youngsters and had reading modeled for them by adults in their life. And Dylan, you can go ahead and advance. And so study after study has shown that access to books and reading is the single most important predictor of future success after education. And it is clear that every child should have access to books and early literacy opportunities. And we are committed to doing everything we can to make this happen for all of the children in our community. And to achieve that or work towards achieving that, we offer literacy-based programming for babies, toddlers, preschoolers, an annual summer reading program. There's also a summer reading program for adults, book discussions, and lots more to get kids excited about reading and having fun with reading. And then we work closely with local educators. Oh, before you advance though, this is my daughter when she was, I forget, maybe 3 or 4. So she's 11 now. And maybe she was 5. I'm so bad with that. But she had just come out of a library program that she was so jazzed about. And my daughter is a reluctant reader, which means that she doesn't naturally take to books. And so as a librarian, that's really a heartbreaker, but she struggles with reading. But by reading to her and by being around books, she has discovered that she's a real graphic novel reader, and now she digs into graphic novels. And it's still hard for her. And I think she's just naturally oriented differently, but she loves it and she's empowered by it. So I had to include my little daughter there. So you can go ahead and advance, Dylan. And this is a field trip that we were lucky enough to. We had that golden hour before Delta hit, and the students from Jackson Street School came by for a trip, and their energy was just beautiful. It was so fun to hear them in the library after it had been so quiet for so long. They were really allies with the schools and educators of all ages. So if you're an educator or have an educator in your life, we offer like teacher cards with special permissions. We can do classroom visits and field trips. So keep that in mind. And I'm going to end by talking about the future. So what does the future look like at Forbes? And Dylan, you can go ahead and advance. So the grounds have grown in usage and popularity due to the pandemic, but I think also just because there's a resurgence and an interest in being outside that is going to continue. And we have strengthened our Wi-Fi signal, added additional outdoor seating, and library programs and community gatherings are being held outside. And so we want to add a band shell to the ground so that we can support outdoor programming more easily without trying to run an electric cord across our driveway. We're also thinking, would it make sense for us to have a little playground so that it's an enticement to bring families to the library and also support our West Street neighborhood in that way? So that's an exciting project. You can go ahead and advance. We're thinking about adding a bike mobile service to the library. So I think this is East Hampton, Emily Williston Public Library's book bike mobile. But what this is it's driven, it's a trailer behind a bicycle that goes out in the community. There's a lot of different variations, and we haven't settled on one, but this one is very collection heavy. So you can go out and have things for people to circulate right from there. You can also have your hotspot with us, so we can provide free Wi-Fi out in the community and answer reference questions, sign people up for library cards, help them download audiobooks and e-audiobooks and things like that. So we're really excited about that. Go ahead, Dylan. I'm going to race through a couple more of these, and I apologize that we're running. I thought we wouldn't fill the time, but we certainly did. Our Coolidge, I gave it away. So this is a fun slide because on the left, we actually made it onto Jeopardy one night back when Alex Trebek was the MC, and this was a question on there, and the answer which I gave away was Calvin Coolidge. So he came from Northampton, and we have his museum, which I don't have time to talk about all of that, but we could be happy to come back and talk about that at some point. And we want to use that. We want to update the museum. It hasn't been updated since the 50s when the museum opened. Grace Coolidge herself, his wife, selected a lot of the cases, and it feels very much stuck in time. So there's a physical updating that we want to do. But we also are realizing that the museum is steeped in colonialism and the way we think about the artifacts that are there. And so we need to contextualize what's there. We need to do a better job of bringing in Native Indigenous experts to walk us through, because Coolidge he signed the Indian Citizenship Act in 1924. And so anyway, I could dig into this, but there's a lot of work to be done there, and it's really exciting. I think it has a lot of potential. Okay, you can advance. Our teen space, it's this sad little interior room. We've done everything we can to make it cheerful and wonderful, but it needs some new love. So we want to bring it up, make it more enticing by adding modern technology, redoing the awful drop ceiling and the fluorescent lights, and then adding like a youth programming space off the back of it that would also support all ages of children. So we could have a nice, bright room that can get messy and can support teens doing teen things in it right off the back of that space. And this is in our basement level. So
Lisa, maybe we should stop here so we have a few minutes to do our conclusion and ask any questions that people have, or do you want to finish up your slides?
I'm so close. But I'm happy to cut it off here. Whatever you'd prefer, that is fine.
It's up to you.
Okay, well, this one here is a fun one. So this slide is the second time that you can use chat. So this is a couple of images of Elise Bernier-Feely, who may be known to you, doing a talk at the library. She's been with us for years and years in local history. And then the image on the right is a black and white of a basketball game that took place in the early 1980s, and it features a local prominent figure. And in the chat, if you think you have an idea on defense, not the offensive player with the ball, but the guy in the darker shirt, if you think you know who that is, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. And I'll give people a look. And then Dylan, you could go ahead and advance here and I will reveal who it is. Oh, we've already got the right answer. That is Mayor Narkowitz. You're absolutely right. So we're working with the Resilience Hub, and I will skip through that. Format changes, and then the thank you slide, I just want to leave up for 1 second so that you have our email addresses. So feel free to reach out to me or Dylan on anything we've talked about today or anything else, and we're happy to connect with you. And now we can take questions. I apologize for the length.
Well, that's okay. It was a wonderful talk, and we thank you so much for doing this. We can't clap at the end because we've discovered that doesn't work real well on Zoom, but we're all shaking our hands. I just want to announce quickly our next few speakers, Northampton Neighbors' next few speakers. On November 19th, we're having Marty Nathan, whose talk will be titled "Working for Climate Justice in the Emergency, What the Heck Can I Do?" On December 3rd, we'll have Karen Foster, who is the director of All Out Adventures, and we'll be talking about a range of possibilities. And on January 7th, we'll have Mandy Carter talking about the power of one, the importance of allies in the movement for social and racial justice. We really hope you come back for those talks. And finally, I just want to make a little word from our sponsor. We don't have any dues for any services or social opportunities, but we do have expensive, and we have to get funds from elsewhere. We hope you will make a contribution to this terrific organization. You can do so by going to this address online and using a credit card, PayPal, or mail us a check at P.O. Box 231. So now I think we have 1 minute for questions. Very little time left, but we've had a wonderful talk. Does anybody want to ask the final question?
I just want to know if this is going to be recorded and available to everyone.
This will be recorded. It's going to be on both YouTube and Open Media. It'll take us a couple of days to get it done, but please tell your family and friends to come watch it or go watch it again. Is that our last question? Anybody else have one last question, or should we close out? Somebody asked about who the artist was. Karen? Here are a bunch of.
Karen Gardner, and I don't know if Karen Gardner is connected with your organization, but she's a birder. I don't know if there's another word for that, but she's and a photographer. So there's beautiful images of some nature photographs that she's taken in half of the gallery this month.
All right, well, we always promise we will close at 4 o'clock, and it is about 4. Thank you so much, and please join us for our next talk and take advantage of the wonderful resources at Forbes Library. And thank you, Lisa and Dylan, for giving a terrific talk.
Thank
Hi,
you for
everybody.
having us.
Have a good weekend.